How did the country of Egypt go from Israel's biggest enemy during the first 3 decades of Israel's existence to the first Arab country willing to make peace with Israel in 1979? Let's find out. So, hello, my friends. This is Akiva Gersh with Israel in 5, where we give you everything Israel in 5 minutes. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions or want to keep the conversation going, please do so below in the comments. Egypt took part in 4 different wars against Israel: 1948, 1956, 1967, and 1973. And every single time, the goal of Egypt was the same: to destroy Israel. It was vocal about it. It was open about it. That was Egypt's goal. And for those few decades, Egypt was the leading military leader of the Middle East, leading the Arab world's fight against the existence of the state of Israel. So what happened? What changed? Well, after 1970, there was a new leader in the country of Egypt, Anwar Sadat, and he actually had a proposal. He had a plan to make peace with with Israel. After all these wars, at that time it was 3 wars. Now, at the time, Israel did not feel like the circumstances were correct. The details were right. They just didn't feel like the timing was right to talk peace with Egypt at the time. So Anwar Sadat changed his mind quickly from a proposal to peace to a continued war against Israel. And it was he who led the Egyptian army in a surprise attack against Israel on Yom Kippur 1973, along with the Syrian army in the north. It was an intense and devastating war for Israel. Israel lost over 2,000 soldiers and civilians in just 3 weeks. Eventually, Israel turned the tide and won the war and defeated both Egypt and Syria simultaneously, but it was a major wake-up call to Israel. And shortly after that, things started to change in the Middle East. In 1977, 4 years after that war, out of nowhere, Anwar Sadat announces he wants to come to Israel, and he wants to talk in the Knesset, the parliament in Israel, and he wants to talk peace to the Israeli people. Israel at that time was open to the idea. Things happened very, very quickly, and before anyone knew it, there he was, Anwar Sadat, Israel's biggest enemy, representing the country that was Israel's biggest enemy, was literally in Jerusalem, speaking in the Knesset after coming down from his plane in the airport in Israel. It happened so quickly that the Israeli national band had to quickly learn the Egyptian national anthem to play for Anwar Sadat as he was coming off of the plane. There was a renewed spirit in Israel. People were starting to believe that they could experience something they never thought possible, and that was peace with one of their neighboring enemy countries. It took some time after that visit of Anwar Sadat. It took about 16 months of very intense negotiations led by the United States, by Jimmy Carter specifically. But 16 months later, there was a peace plan, there was a peace deal, and Menachem representing Israel, Anwar Sadat representing Egypt, and Jimmy Carter representing America all met on the front lawn of the White House, and they signed the deal in 1979. And this deal called for a renewed relationship between Egypt and Israel, who were enemies since the beginning of the State of Israel in 1948. It called for the Israeli withdrawal from the Sinai Peninsula, which it took over as a result of the 6-Day War in 1967. It called for diplomatic relations, recognition of each other, the supply of oil to Israel from the Sinai Peninsula, which Israel had actually discovered while it was controlling the Sinai Peninsula during those years. And it also called for a demilitarized state situation in the Sinai Peninsula, meaning Egypt could not bring in military forces. There would be a UN peacekeeping force there. And it worked, and things changed. And there hasn't been a war between Egypt and Israel ever since. Now, some people call this a Cold War because it's not the warmest or friendliest of relationships, but on a top diplomatic, political, and military level, this peace deal has been absolutely successful, creating an atmosphere of cooperation and partnership, and above all, and most importantly, an atmosphere of peace between these two nations, right? Some people in Israel, after this deal was signed in 1979, thought the rest of the Arab world, the rest of the Middle East was going to start running towards Israel to make peace deals. That did not happen. The next country to make peace with Israel wouldn't be until 1994, which was Jordan. And of the surrounding nations around Israel, there hasn't been another country yet. to sign a peace deal with Israel. But there still was a major shift in the geopolitics of the region. Egypt did suffer somewhat. As a result, it was kicked out of the Arab League for a good 10 years. Diplomatic relations were cut off between Egypt and Syria. And shortly after this deal was signed, Anwar Sadat himself was assassinated by Islamist terrorists in Egypt. But still, it was a historic agreement and a game changer, and something that brought a tremendous amount of peace and security to the region. Israel had to worry about one less border, which was a real big shift in its military planning and strategy. Obviously, Israel still did and continues to have enemies on its borders, but not having a country like Egypt as an enemy definitely made a tremendous difference for the small and at that point still young state of Israel. This is basically how Israel's enemy number one for the first 3 decades of existence went from this big enemy to a partner in peace, changing the atmosphere here and restoring hope for the Israeli people that maybe there's more peace to come. Shalom and thank you.